The Gravel War was a long and legendary battle that took place over a century with new waves of mercenaries sent in to take over from their older counterparts. This war started from a rivalry between two brothers from a wealthy family and led to the deaths of countless people and robots. How did the members of this family live for so long? How did the Great Eagle Scourge of 1822 impact them? And how does their story end? Here we explore in the lore and story behind the iconic Mann family. Way back in 1822, in the English city of Mann upon Thames, Zephaniah Mann and his wife, Bet, eagerly anticipated the birth of their children. Zephaniah Mann and his brother, Silas, had built up an extremely successful business, Mann & Sons Munitions Concern, selling weaponry to those in desperate need, and as a result, they built up a vast fortune, something Zephaniah and his wife benefited from. Zephaniah worked with many, but his most trusted aide by far was Barnabas Hale of the Australias. Together, they had explored the world and built up the Mann Empire. Zephaniah appeared to care more for his job than his wife. However, when she got pregnant, he believed she had finally done something right. In Mann Manor on the evening of the 2nd of September, Bet screamed in pain as she gave birth, while Zephaniah and Barnabas discussed a new potential market for their business. But Bet's screaming frustrated Zephaniah as he tried to work. Eventually, she gave birth to 3 children instead of the one they had expected, but unfortunately, she did not survive. The death of his wife appeared to upset Barnabas more than Zephaniah. He cared only to see his offspring. As he followed the midwife, Zephaniah met his children. First, he was introduced to Redmond and Blutarch, to which he noted they were both strapping and handsome. Then he inquired about where the 3rd child was. The midwife was afraid to show Zephaniah that this child was a little different. Both Redmond and Blutarch had come out healthy, but Grey was much smaller. She grew even more concerned when he spoke to her. Young Grey Man had in fact learned to speak in his mother's womb simply by listening to her, and to pass the time as he waited to be born, he even invented a new form of algebra. Impatient, Zephaniah ordered the midwife to show him his 3rd son, and as they met for the first time, baby Grey's first words to his father were, "Hello, father." Instantly, Zephaniah demanded the child be smothered. Before anyone could act, an eagle smashed through the window and stole the baby. Without a wife, Zephaniah, with the help of his staff, raised his remaining children, Redmond and Blutarch, and the existence of the 3rd child was kept secret. As the boys grew up, they formed a strong sibling rivalry with each other, but they both truly loved their father. Elsewhere, the eagle that had stolen Grey raised him and treated him like one of her own. She fed him grubs and mice alongside her other children. She kept him warm and nestled him into her feathery breast. As Grey grew stronger over the years, he appeared to resent her for stealing him. He was incredibly intelligent, and when he grew strong enough, he ate her and her children and crawled back to civilization. Speaking of eating, this video is sponsored by HelloFresh. I'm sorry that was a terrible transition, but this is good eating. I enjoyed this sponsor so much that I have actually become a customer myself. This handy meal kit service makes cooking at home the easiest thing in the world, and it's delivered straight to your door. I'm a huge foodie, and after a long day of editing, the easiest thing to do was just order takeout. Not only was that super expensive, but it also wasn't very good for me. HelloFresh changed that. They've even given me a handy code to share with you guys, POGSCARION Feb65, which gives you 65% off your first meal, plus free shipping. HelloFresh is much cheaper than doing a weekly shop, and there's less waste thanks to their set menus. I've noticed since using HelloFresh that I've saved approximately 25% off my weekly food bill. Not only are the savings amazing, but the quality of this food is so fresh. They tell me the ingredients travel from the farm to me in less than 7 days, and you can tell. I've been watching my calories a little bit lately, and this has helped massively. The meals taste so good too. I think the best part about this is that myself and my partner take turns cooking these meals, and it's just one of those things where I'm excited to see what the next meal is. As everything comes pre-packaged, the dread of cooking after editing has vanished. Some of these meals can also be made in less than 15 minutes. The falafel power bowls, seared steak and potatoes, and bean burritos, they're honestly so good. With over 35 recipes, there are so many options to choose from. I've just moved over to the Calorie Smart, but there are also others like Carb Smart, Protein, and Veggie. It's pretty great. To get started with HelloFresh, use my link or go to hellofresh.com and use the code POGSCARIONFEB65 for 65% off your first meal plus free shipping. Once you click, my description will live update to count up the purchases. Once again, thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Now back to the 1800s and the grand tale of the Mann family. In 1850, Blutarch and Redmond attempted to become more of a part of the family business. Even though they hated each other, they convinced their father to buy large regions of land in New Mexico. Zephaniah always wanted to expand his business, and the sons told him that there was some land in the unclaimed frontier of America that would be perfect for him, and this land contained gravel as far as the eyes could see. Zephaniah dreamed of terraforming the lands his sons had described to him into the world's most majestic and profitable pits of gravel to be used to expand their weapons trade in the uncolonized westernmost regions. Trusting the tales Redmond and Blutarch had told him, Zephaniah allowed them to purchase the land. However, after he and his sons arrived, he discovered they were wrong. Instead of gravel as far as the eyes could see, he had spent the entirety of his fortune on a continent-sized parcel of sand. A windswept desert hell. This was something he would never forgive his dim-witted sons for. Over in England, Gray studied, plotted, and waited as he thought about how he could re-enter his family and claim the fortune he deserved. On one of Zephaniah's many expeditions with Barnabas to Australia, they discovered something new. Zephaniah called it miracle gravel, a rare metal with extraordinary properties, some of which included increased intelligence and virility. Aware that this was a rare find and that he could do something great with it, Zephaniah and Barnabas took all of the metal they could find and stored it in a secret cache. Gray Mann appeared to keep watch over the activities of his family over this time, and he contacted his father. He had also seen what this miracle gravel could do and attempted to blackmail him for it. Gray was incredibly smart, and if he could acquire this miracle gravel, it would amplify his brain even more. Zephaniah did not comply with the demands of his secret, weakest son and continued on with his business. Back in the Badlands, Zephaniah attempted to see the positives in the purchase of this land, but as he travelled around, he contracted almost every illness known to man. Putrid fever, white plague, tumours of the eyelids, brain itch and shingles, just to name a few. By his side, his maidservant Elizabeth helped him through this awful time, as Barnabas procured poppy flowers to create medicines that relieved him from his pain. Although the pain was almost gone, these illnesses had a major effect on his body, and so he decided to write his last will and testament in preparation for his passing on his skin he had lost as a side effect of impetigo. In this will, Zephaniah firstly vowed to haunt the earth as a terrifying poltergeist, up until the point his all-consuming vengeance was quenched against the world and his sons that had squandered his wealth on useless land. To his maidservant Elizabeth, he left his estate, deeds, tobacco plantation, and whatever remained of his fortune that his sons had not spent. He also asked that she search for the gravel he had sought after, and upon finding it, place it into a giant pit, a gravel pit, which she later did. In a secret part of this will, he also left her the miracle gravel cache to keep safe and, most importantly, keep secret. To his aide, Barnabas, he left him full control of Mann and Sons Munitions, the family company. He had helped him build this company and relieved him from his pain in his final days, and as such, was rewarded for his work. And to his sons, Blutarch and Redmond, he left the land they had convinced him to purchase. However, he left the land to share, knowing full well they would fight over it for the rest of their lives. The death of Zephaniah Mann split the Mann family apart even more than it already was, and triggered an ever-growing war. Over the following decades, Blutarch and Redmond Mann looked for different ways to claim complete ownership of the land. Their father was correct, they simply lacked the ability to share. At one point, they each created their own companies. Blutarch formed the Builders League United, and with this, on the surface, the company mined gravel. Below their base of operations, Blutarch had turned many of his locations into bases for hired mercenaries to fight for and seize the land. The brothers were very similar in the way they thought, and Redmond had exactly the same idea. He created the Reliable Excavation Demolition Company, and just like Blutarch, this consisted of many gravel mining locations with bases of operations below for mercenaries. The brothers' mercenaries fought in a constant war, and a stalemate ensued. Barnabas earned a lot of money from this war as he supplied weaponry from Manco, the company that had once belonged to the brothers' family. During this period, the people of Australia discovered miracle gravel. With this discovery, they named the metal Australium after their country, and with its outstanding properties, they outpaced the whole world with teleportation technology, cloaking technology, and even founded the entire spectrum of the moustache sciences. By 1890, the brothers understood their father was right. They would both die of old age and have nothing to show for it. They had had the opportunity to share the land and make something of it, but their constant bickering and dislike for each other had got in the way. Aware of his and his brother's age, Blutarch asked to see his mercenary engineer, Radigan Conagher, to build him a machine that would keep him alive. If he could just stay alive longer than his brother, then he would win the land and this lifelong fight against him. As a very intelligent man, Radigan agreed and returned to his shop to work on the plans for the device. However, as he entered, he was greeted by Elizabeth, Zephaniah's old maidservant. She asked Radigan not to build the machine, and after he refused, she offered him something else: the Australium cash she had been given by Zephaniah in his will. She explained how this transformative new element had allowed Australia to jump ahead in technology, and in her words, if it could make a genius out of an Australian, imagine what it could do for a man with Radigan's capabilities. In return for this metal, she asked that if Radigan had to make a life extender device for Blutarch, then he should also make one for Redmond. He knew what this metal could do for him, so he accepted and gave these devices to their new owners on the 17th of July, 1894. With his work done, Radigan Conagher went back to the fight and built up new technologies, while Elizabeth searched for more Australium to add to her stockpile, and the brothers continued to fight. In the 1930s, a new group of mercenaries joined the fight as the stalemate for the ownership of the land continued. Barnabas had passed away at this point, and his son, Bilius, took over the reins of Manco. Once again, he continued to produce the supply of weapons to this never-ending war between the mercenaries. In 1968, another group of mercenaries joined the fight, and in this group was the grandson of Radigan Conagher, who had also joined as an engineer, Dell. It had been around 60 years since Radigan had constructed the life extender devices, and Blutarch had issues with his machine. Blutarch died every now and then, but the device pulled him back. In a way, it did extend his life. The issue he had was that every time he died, it took him longer and longer to return. So, with Radigan having passed on, he demanded that Dell fix the machine his grandfather had built. In preparation, Blutarch had even dug up Radigan's grave to access his blueprints for the machine. However, Blutarch was not aware that Radigan had also created a map of Australium caches and hidden them inside of his blueprints. With this, he was manipulated by Helen, also known as the Administrator, an offspring of Elizabeth, to fix both of the brothers' machines, and he went on to help the Administrator with her secret plan. Therefore, the Mann brothers continued to live as they waited for the other to die. By 1972, the brothers' war had waged on for over 100 years, both of them no closer to claiming sole ownership of the land they refused to share. One day, they both received letters from each other in which they offered to meet and discuss what they were going to do to bring an end to this war. Unknown to them, these letters had been written by their secret brother, Gray. He just needed them together to begin the next stage of his plan. For this meeting, Redmond and Blutarch wasted more of their wealth and hired the Alamo, a historic Spanish fortress compound, and had it brought to the Badlands in New Mexico for their meeting. Upon meeting, the brothers agreed that their war had led to a bitter stalemate for over a century, and that when they did eventually die, they would have no heir to continue the Mann family bloodline. Blutarch proposed a truce so that they could discuss the best course of action, and together, as they thought alike, they agreed that the most obvious and perfect plan without flaw would be to make a machine that would get one of them pregnant. As they shook hands on this deal, they realized they had actually not sent letters to each other, and someone had tricked them into meeting. As he watched from afar, Gray entered the Alamo with his own immortality device on his back, and he explained everything. He had watched them for 150 years just squander their father's money as they fought over worthless pits of gravel. Gravel was not the way to go anymore. The true wealth was the company their father had given away to the Hale family. Gray wanted his family's company back. Gravel was useless in this age. New technologies and energy supplies had been discovered. As Gray argued with his brothers, he realized that they were not as smart as him and refused to accept that this land and the gravel they had fought over had been a complete waste of time. Frustrated with their squabbling, he ended the gravel war for them and killed them both with a knife. With his brothers out of the way and with his superior technology, he decided it was time to take what he believed was owed to him, his birthright, Manco. The war between the Mann brothers was finally over, but Gray still had something to fight for. With their deaths, Gray absorbed both Redmond and Blutarch's companies and formed Gray Gravel. With no war left to fight, the mercenaries also lost their jobs. In the next stage of his plan, Gray used his new facilities across New Mexico and built up a robot army to take down Manco's factories in the bigger plan to take over the company. In response to this, Saxton Hale, son of Bilius and now CEO of Manco, rehired the mercenaries to fight for him against these robots. For an unknown reason, Gray's robots ran on money, the perfect incentive for these mercenaries to take out as many as they could. Back in the Alamo, the ghosts of Blutarch and Redmond bickered about who had won their war. Blutarch argued he had won as Gray had killed Redmond first, therefore he was alive longer and had won. Once again, they could not agree on this, so they then attempted to send each other to hell. If one of them left this mortal plane, then the remaining brother would win. The final man standing, Gray had always believed himself to be better than his brothers, but over the robot war, he soon discovered that he was actually just like them. He sent through his robots to claim Manco, but the mercenaries kept them at bay, and another stalemate began. After he realized this, Gray refused to repeat the mistakes of Redmond and Blutarch. After reading the Manco manual, he entered the offices of the company and told Saxton that the war was over. This was yet another stalemate and Saxton and his mercenaries had won. As he proposed a new offer, he attempted to appear as menacing as possible. However, he did not realize that Saxton had turned his desk into a grill and burned his hands as Saxton cooked some steaks. In pain, Gray demanded Saxton participate in the Mann Co. challenge. This meant that any CEO of any other company could take over Mann Co. legally if they beat the current CEO, this being Saxton Hale, in unarmed combat. Saxton was strong, had a fantastic mustache, and believed that he could beat this old man easily. But as Saxton began to punch him, Gray revealed he was no longer the CEO of Grey Gravel. His daughter was, Olivia Mann, the youngest in the Mann bloodline. Gray believed Saxton would not hit a child, and he was right. So, as a result of Saxton's refusal to fight back against Olivia, under the Mann Co. challenge clause, Olivia Mann was given the title of CEO of Mann Co. The company was back in the family. With control of Mann Co., Gray fired the Mercenaries and searched for the stockpile of Australium he believed was hidden in the factories and on the family's land. But he soon discovered that it had been stolen by Helen, the administrator. Gray had an immortality device and needed it to live. The issue was that it was powered by Australium. He just needed to find the administrator. Desperate to find the Australium, Gray hired the batch of mercenaries from the Classic era to track down the administrator. On the other side of this war, the administrator rehired the current batch of mercenaries to fight for her. Eventually, the Classic Mercs tracked down the current Mercs and, under the orders of Gray, tortured them for information about the administrator, but the mercenaries had no idea where she was. As he waited for this information, the leader of the Classic Mercs grew curious about how Gray had been able to live for 150 years. They were getting older, but Gray just stayed the same. At this point, the Mercs did not care about the vast sums of money they were being paid, and so the Merc ripped the immortality device from Gray's back with the hope to replicate this technology for his crew. To his luck, the younger mercenaries managed to take out the Classics holding them captive. In his final moments, Gray begged them to take him to the administrator's assistant, Miss Pauling. Everyone hated Gray Mann as he was behind them being fired, their capture and torture. Completely vulnerable, he explained to them that he could have done so much with the world if he had gotten to the Australium first, instead of the administrator. He admitted that she was much smarter than him, but with whatever he could have done to the world, he feared that what she had in mind was much worse. And so, he asked Pauling and her mercenaries to stop her. With these final words, Gray Mann died as Pauling screamed at him, leaving little Olivia Mann as the final member of the Mann bloodline and CEO of Mann Co. There are so many storylines I chose not to include in this video as I wanted to focus solely on the Mann family and their impact on the world. I do intend on making other videos on important characters and events, and eventually even a complete timeline. The topics of my videos are normally pretty serious in tone. Even in the Portal series, although there are some silly moments, the whole trapped in a facility and forced to test to stay alive thing is pretty dark. With Team Fortress, I reread all of the comics over the span of a couple of days just to get my head around how nuts it is. It starts off with a rich family, a kid gets kidnapped by an eagle. Don't even get me started on Poopy Joe. Oh, and a Welsh legend, Tom Jones, is murdered as his wizard roommate watches. There's also a raccoon sanctuary at one point. I will cover these topics in depth. The timeline is absolutely crazy, and as far as we know, it is still not finished. Even though we were promised the next comic issue 6 years ago, we can still have hope. Team Fortress has been given a new lease of life after some great creators on this platform finally got the attention of Valve to deal with the awful bot problem. I play as the engineer and my greatest enemy is the spy. It's great to be playing the game again. This is a new series for the channel and it is one I've wanted to explore for a while. If you are new here, stick around. I cover Half-Life, Portal, Doom, ARGs, and I'll also be looking at Quake and Left 4 Dead. That was everything I wanted to say really, so finally, thank you to my gold tier patrons and channel members. Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Mossflit, Lars Lowell, Duke, Toadnut, Oren X, and Azu. Your support really does help the channel. Now, was the Gravel War worth it? Was Grey justified in his war against the family? And what topic would you like me to cover next? This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.